So, so considering that I'm going to lead it this morning and tomorrow, I have some background for um, my class tomorrow that I know that we've just gone through with the book of Ezekiel or book of Jeremiah and stuff. So just to because we didn't just pop into Ezekiel, right? Ezekiel, there's a lot of things that led up to it. God told the people, don't marry from other nations. Um, don't worship, the women will lead you to worship, will lead your men to worship their idols. And what it was, Solomon was the first. So we had King Saul, and then David became the king who was a good king. And then Solomon, his son, took over after David died, and Solomon went and married all those other women, and even had so many that he wasn't married to. But what it does say, he says, God warns him about that. He says, you shall not enter into marriage with them, neither shall they with you, for surely they will turn away your hearts after their gods. Surely. So Solomon marries them. Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, for Moloch, the abomination of the Ammonites. He did, and so he did for all his foreign wives who made offerings and sacrificed to their gods. Solomon built those altars, those high places in Israel for the gods of his foreign wives. So, good grief, Solomon! I mean, it goes all the way back there. He brought sin in. Anyway, not that I'm blaming him any more than I would blame Eve or Adam, but this is how it got to where it went. So, and then we had Jeremiah, who, I mean, there's a lot of other things going on, of course, a lot of different kings. I think 19 kings in the north, and there were 19 kings in the south. And then we have Jeremiah, and God saying that I'm bringing destruction, go into captivity. So all of this is very familiar to us, so I'm going to kind of skip over that. Jehoiakim, who we're going to read about in the first chapter, King Jehoiachin. It says that what happened with him in 2 Kings 24, at that time the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem, and the city was besieged. And Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to the city while his servants were besieging it, and Jehoiachin, the king of Judah, gave himself up to the king of Babylon, himself and his mother and his servants and his officials and his palace officials. The king of Babylon took him prisoner in the 8th year of his reign. Carried off all the treasures of the house and all that. He was 18 when he began to reign. So I'm just bringing the people from Judah up into this captivity where we have Ezekiel. Anyway, we remember all that. But he says, finally he says, Jeremiah 29, thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, to all the exiles. So Jeremiah was telling the people to go do that. Otherwise, God's going to kill them with the sword, pestilence, and famine. And so then when they go, he says, thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, to all the exiles whom I have sent into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. Build houses and live in them. Plant gardens and eat their produce. Take wives and have sons and daughters. Take wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage, that they may bear sons and daughters. Multiply there and do not decrease. But seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare you will find your welfare. So they're up there. And then we have Daniel. I mean, if you're looking back and forth at all that's going on here, Daniel had already gone. 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, he went. So I think my point is that God sent Jeremiah as a prophet before the destruction of Judah, to prophesy, and then he prophesied all through that time too. He sent, but Jeremiah stayed in Judah. He didn't go into Babylon. Daniel, he was a prophet in the king's court, and Ezekiel was a prophet to the people, to the exiled people. So they all had these different places where they prophesied.
Nan, it makes me just think how God just so loved his people and wanted so bad for them to listen to him that he sent these 3 great, and probably others, but these 3 great prophets, like pretty much in the same time frame.
Right.
Trying to get through to them, but their hearts just were so hardened.
Mm-hmm.
That, just like that's how much he loved them. Mm-hmm. 3 amazing prophets.
Mm-hmm.
From 3 different tribes too.
Yes.
Because, Daniel was from Judah, and I believe Jeremiah was from Benjamin, and Ezekiel said he was a priest, so he had to be from Levi.
Jeremiah was also a priest.
Yeah, it said something like in the commentary I read him, it said he was a professional priest.
Professional?
I don't know what they meant by that. Except for that he was not from the tribe of Levi.
Okay.
So he wasn't a
Levite.
God sent.
Okay.
He wasn't a priest like that.
Maybe he was a priest in the way that he was an intercessor kind of between God and the people. Like a prophet.
But they were all prophets.
Yeah.
Like Ezekiel was a priest turned prophet.
Yeah. So, Ezekiel's prophetic ministry began when Judah still stood as an independent kingdom. The temple was still there. It was under Babylonian domination, but the temple was still there when he began his. So, in other words, he was taken before the final destruction of Judah. Ezekiel was a married man. Just a little tidbit there in Ezekiel 24, which we'll get to one of these days. It says, "So I spoke to the people in the morning, and at evening my wife died, and on the next morning I did as I was commanded." So we know he had a wife. He also had a home, which, I don't know, this was pointed out in what I was reading. I thought, well, I guess, of course, he had a home, but he had a home. And God told him to build homes and multiply and stuff. So he says, "In the 6th year, in the 6th month, on the 5th day of the month, as I sat in my house with the elders of Judah sitting before me, the hand of the Lord fell upon me there." So anyway, that's just some background. So we get to where we are this morning. See, the first 3 verses. We'll stop after the first 3 verses. And this is the ESV, I think. "In the 30th year, in the 4th month, on the 5th day of the month, as I was among the exiles by the Chebar Canal, the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God. On the 5th day of the month," it was the 5th year of the exile of King Jehoiachin, "the word of the Lord came to Ezekiel the priest, the son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans by the Chebar Canal. And the hand of the Lord was upon him there." That's just amazing in itself. So the 30th year, when you're just reading through the Bible and you read that, you can go right by that, because who cares? The 30th year of what, right? Well, this is most likely the 30th year of Ezekiel's life, because way back in Numbers chapter 4, verses 2 and 3 say, "Take a census of the sons of Kohath from among the sons of Levi by their clans and their fathers' houses, from 30 years old up to 50 years old, all who can come on duty. All who can come on duty to do the work of the tent of meeting. So you had to be 30 years old to be able to work in the tent of meeting, in the tabernacle. Verse 3 tells us that Ezekiel was a priest, and it is significant that he would begin his ministry at age 30. Luke tells us that Luke 3:23, Jesus, when he began his ministry, was about 30 years of age. And I just thought that was interesting, that he would begin, maybe that's why he began his ministry at age 30 and not before. And it only took him 3 years to complete his ministry. So anyway, I thought that was interesting.
I think if the people knew that you had to be 30 to be considered
serving,
that Jesus did that on purpose. So that people,
yes,
if he was going to
be the prophet, the priest.
Yes, and a rabbi in that Jewish community, that 30 was important.
That's
to
right.
Be respected.
Yep.
And taken seriously. Follow the law.
Yep. Good point. Okay, so Ezekiel's vision began during the 5th year of King Jehoiachin's exile, and so that puts a time on it. So one of the points that, if anybody is looking at Amir's book of Ezekiel while we're looking at this, one of the things he pointed out was that Ezekiel uses a lot of timestamps so that it's not vague, it's specific. Here's your details, here's the date, this is when it happened. So it just confirms, the reality of it not just being an allegory or just plain symbolism. There's real things happening at real times. The Lord came, the heavens were opened. Okay, the heavens didn't just open, the heavens were opened on purpose. The word of the Lord came to him at the Chebar Canal. The Chebar Canal was part of a complex irrigation system and major transport route between the Tigris and the Euphrates. So I have a map. I don't think you guys would ever, I don't know that you can see it, but if you can see the Tigris River and the Euphrates River, I'm thinking down toward the bottom where they meet, somewhere around that area is probably where the Chebar Canal was. But it was it was a big place. It was a big canal. And most likely was being constructed or maintained by the Babylonians, possibly using the Jewish exiles for labor, of course. Why wouldn't they? And that might explain why Ezekiel was there. But it doesn't say all that, but that makes sense. He says, I saw visions of God. As I looked, behold, a stormy wind came out of the north, and a great cloud with brightness around it, and fire flashing forth continually, and in the midst of the fire, as it were, gleaming metal. So you get this picture. Amir says that it was like the dark cloud, the stormy wind coming out of the north in the great cloud was a cloud of dust, dark, which is common. I think they just had something like that happen in Gaza just the other day. But anyway, a dust storm, big cloud. But it may or may not have been like that. But here, stormy wind come out of the north, and a great cloud with brightness around it, and fire flashing forth continually, and in the midst of the fire, as it were, gleaming metal. That's the Shekinah glory. That's the presence of God, the manifested presence of God. it's a holy, terrifying presence. It's the kind of presence that make people fall on their faces and drop to their knees. And John and Paul, just that kind of presence. In the midst of the fire, as it were, gleaming metal. I think some translations call it amber, but it was glowing. It was in the center. It was the heart of God's glory, the place where your eyes landed when you saw all of this. It was the center of it.
And from what I read and listened to, they said that there's no English word to describe what this was.
Mm-hmm.
And that it was, like you said, the glory of God, the Shekinah glory,
Mm-hmm.
that it was like a unapproachable presence of God.
Mm-hmm.
That there's no, I don't know what the Hebrew word is. I'm sure they said it, but that there's no English word that can describe what this really was.
Right, and obviously also there was no Hebrew word for Ezekiel because everything is in the likeness of. It looked like it had the appearance
Yes.
of. It was all
Yes.
it was all less. It was so much more than he could even describe. So you're right. It says in the last verse in the chapter 1. It's a good time to bring that up here. Such was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord, and when I saw it, I fell on my face, and I heard the voice of one speaking. So he's describing the likeness of the glory of the Lord. In this cloud and this glory being shown to Ezekiel was with. It came to Ezekiel in exile in Babylon, and he promised the Israelites that he would never leave them or forsake them. And even when he takes them out of their land into captivity, he's still there. And even today, his promise is still, I will never, never leave you or forsake you. So, those darn Israelites, if they would just come around, but I know most of them won't yet, but those are amazing promises to them, and then we get to accept them too when we are grafted into that branch. Anyway, verse 5 starts talking about the faces. There's different things in this chapter that I'm telling you, if you just read through it, it's like crazy stuff, right? What in the world's going on? But when you stop and look at it, it's so interesting. From the midst of it came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had a human likeness, but each had 4 faces, and each of them had 4 wings. Their legs were straight, and the soles of their feet were like the sole of a calf's foot, and they sparkled like burnished bronze. So they were glowing also, these faces. So again, it's the likeness of, it's the appearance of. They had a human likeness, which would suggest that they were intelligent. They had a will. They had the ability to communicate. They could reflect the image of God in humanity. It kind of like a connecting, something we can understand with something of God. They had 4 faces. They each had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their legs were unwavering, upright. They were straight, like they were strong and stable. They had the feet of a calf's feet. They were able to take action at a moment's notice. They could act quickly according to whatever God's will was. They didn't bend, or they didn't go to the right or the left. They were right steady, okay? Under their wings on their 4 sides, they had human hands. So they were able to do tasks. They were able to do things. Why do you have hands, And the four had their faces and their wings thus. Their wings touched one another. Each one of them went straight forward without turning as they went. So I don't think that meant I think the wings, we'll see later, were touching each other, at the ends, and they went forward. The whole beings moved together in unison. Each one of them went straight forward without turning as they went. As for the likeness of their faces, each had a human face. The four had the face of a lion on the right side. The four had the face of an ox on the left side. And the four had the face of an eagle. So we see four faces. And if you tried to draw this, I looked to see images of this, and they all look different. It's just wild. So the human face, each had a human face, intelligent, able to reason, made in the image of God, representing wisdom and understanding. This is representing this kind of, the human face represented that. The lion represents strength, majesty, and kingship. Think about Jesus as the Lion of Judah. The ox represents service, strength, and sacrifice. It's the aspect of God's nature that involves provision and sacrifice. It's the ox. The eagle represents divine protection and deliverance on eagle's wings. It could represent God's omniscience and ability to see all things from a heavenly perspective, above and beyond the earthly realm. So the enormity of the four different, the faces representing everything basically.
These are all the same faces that were on the flags.
On the flags? Oh yeah.
When they built the tabernacle. And they're the same, that are correlated with each one of the Gospels. So it all points to Jesus.
It does. And it's the same four faces in Revelation that four, where we see the throne room and everything. That's interesting. And the number 4 is also significant as it points to completion or, completeness. The 4 corners of the earth, the 4 winds, and it's just total everything. So there's nothing left out of. These creatures represent everything. I don't know if everything is the right word to use, but that's the word that I'm using. And then he starts talking about their wings. It says, such were their faces, verse 11, and their wings were spread out above. Each creature had 2 wings, each of which touched the wing of another, while 2 covered their bodies. So it talks about they were spread out above. To me, that looks like they're worshiping. I don't know. I can just picture all of these creatures. We're calling them creatures still.
So this is where I was confused.
Okay.
We have 4 wings and then we have 2 wings, and I'm confused by that.
Each had 2, I think. Well, they have 4 wings.
They have 4 faces, 4 wings, hands under the wings. And now we have 2 wings.
I think 2 are up, Sue. 2 are pointing up and they're touching each other, lifted up, and the other 2 cover their body. So there's 4 wings, but there's 2 that are in the upward and 2 that are in the downward.
Okay, so this is more of 2 of the wings were up, and 2 were covering the body. Okay.
Yes.
I was trying to make that work, but just the way it's phrased had me confused.
Yeah, I see where that would confuse you, but I did not get confused, so that's amazing. But yeah, I think that with their 2 wings, with their initial wings, they're worshiping. That's what they do, right?
The verse ahead of it too, when they said each of them had 4 faces, I'm thinking 4 heads with 4 faces, not one head, not one face on each angel.
No, each of them. There were 4
Right.
creatures, and each of them had 4 faces. So yeah, there's a lot going on. Yes. But yeah, the Bible often talks about angels being in constant service and adoration of God. The wings touching the wings of another not represents, but it shows that they're connected. They're uniform. They're united. They're in harmony, reflecting the order and unity within God's creation. I mean, the differences between these creatures and us is just astounding. But that's what we should, when you get to the end of all of this, looking at these creatures and the way that, and all of it, the wheels and everything else is the unity, the way that everything is connected in obedience and doing God's will and worshiping Him, and everybody's doing it in unison. I just got done reading a book that somebody recommended. I finally read it, but called The Boys in the Boat, and it's a rowing team that went to the Berlin Olympics in 1936 or 38 or something like that. But throughout the whole book, the main thing was they took these, I think there were 9 of them, boys fresh out of high school. I think they started out in high school, but anyway, just from here, there, and everywhere, and put them on a rowing team, built this rowing team that ended up going to the Olympics, but they had to work like these angels are working here. Every stroke, each one of them had to have the same rhythm, the same strength. Every oar had to be like it was one oar. They had to work in unison like that. So that reminded me of that book when I was reading this. And that's what we need to do. It's so hard. Anyway.
These are also, they're angels, and I think they're the cherubim.
Yes. Yeah.
Which, and anytime you see that I am on a Hebrew word, it's plural.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is awesome when you look at Elohim, because that's God in plural, so I love that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's like different levels of angels, and I think that's interesting as well.
We're going to get to that too.
Okay.
And that is very interesting. Yeah. Okay. 2 wings covering their body might represent modesty, but it certainly represents humility. They're covering their bodies. They're being reverent in the presence of the Shekinah glory of God. It looks like one big scene, and it's all just one ball of a scene, but we'll find out that they are not God. They're not equal to God. They're worshiping. They're like us. We're going to be higher. No, it made him a little higher than we're a little higher than the angels. Is that what the Bible says? He made us, or made Jesus a little higher than the angels?
I think it's man.
I think it is too.
Okay. That's amazing. Okay. And each went straight forward wherever the Spirit would go. They went without turning as they went. Okay. Unwavering. Obedient. Aligning with God's will. They were wherever the Spirit would go, they went without turning. They were in complete submission to the Spirit of God, who directs their movement, just like we are being led by the Spirit, right? Oh, to be like these angels. We will be. So, anyway, Ezekiel clearly sees this obedience and submission to the will of God. So it's almost like a lesson for him to see,
And I wanted to, maybe you know this and you can stop me, but the Jewish rabbis used this to teach ministry. They used these creatures, and they went through and used the symbols as part of ministry, like humanity is for the priesthood was used to minister to humanity. The straight feet are stability. The burnished brass is purity of service. The hands of a man are the practical ministry, the doing.
Mm-hmm.
The four wings are the unity.
Mm-hmm.
Looking up to the throne of God is a priority. Humility, covering their body. When they always are looking straight ahead, that's integrity. Whenever they go wherever the Spirit led them, that's availability. The burning coals of fire, which I don't think about there yet, is intensity. And the activity, when they're moving about, is the activity. And I thought that was very interesting that the Jewish rabbis would teach these to people, others going into the ministry. These were the qualifications.
Yeah. Maybe
that were represented.
Maybe some of the Christian teachers could use that. That's
exactly.
Good stuff. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What did you call that?
What did I call what? Me?
What they used to teach? I'm trying to look it up.
They taught these qualities for the ministry. The Jewish rabbis used these to teach qualities of going into the ministry, which are good qualities for any ministry.
Yeah. So they probably have a name on their book, right? That's what Sue's looking for. What's the name of that book? Anyway, yeah, I really, God gives us examples, right? He doesn't tell us to do something. I thought it's
just the depth of his word.
Yes.
Just the depth of what he, not just what's on the surface and the letters on the page, but there's so much to it. It's just humbling.
Mm-hmm. And this is just for a visual, like I like visuals, and this is a great visual for, like when maybe God says, be nice to that person that's being rude to you. Just, because sometimes he tells you that, right? So, to be able to envision the way that these angels were obedient to the Holy Spirit and submissive and in unison, and that it forms, it's not just an act of obedience. It has purpose in that obedience. Anyway, verse 13. As for the likeness of the living creatures, their appearance was like burning coals of fire, like the appearance of torches moving to and fro among the living creatures. Sounds like Pentecost a little bit. And the fire was bright, and out of the fire went forth lightning. And the living creatures darted to and fro like the appearance of a flash of lightning. Okay, here's where we get to the cherubim. In chapter 10, Ezekiel talks about this encounter, and he calls these creatures cherubim. So we do find out that these are cherubim. Cherubim are angelic creatures created by God that worship, praise, and serve God. We find them in Genesis chapter 3 after he drove the man out. He drove out the man, and at the east of the Garden of Eden he placed the cherubim and a flaming sword that turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life. So he put cherubim there to keep people from coming back in and eating the tree of life in their sin. Satan was a cherubim. In Ezekiel 28, verse 14, we will read, "You were an anointed guardian cherub. I placed you. You were on the holy mountain of God. In the midst of the stones of fire you walked." I guess I would say Satan was a cherub, but he belonged to the cherubim. So Satan was one of these creatures. Whether or not he was built just like them, I don't know. But cherubim were also carved and woven into many items in the temple, in the tabernacle temple. Probably both. In 2 Chronicles chapter 3, it says, "In the most holy place he made 2 cherubim of wood and overlaid them with gold. The wings of the cherubim together extended 20 cubits, which is 30 feet. So the wings of the cherubim together were 30 feet. That's 2 of them. One wing of the one, 5 cubits, touched the wall of the house, and its other wing of 5 cubits touched the wing of the other cherub. And of this cherub, one wing of 5 cubits touched the wall of the house, and the other wing." So it's just saying these 2 together, one touched this wall, one touched the other wall, and they met in the middle, touching each other. The wings of these cherubim extended 20 cubits. The cherubim stood on their feet, facing the nave. So they were working, serving like that too. You just see, but they had the likeness of a human. You have this, this shape kind of thing. Anyway, so yeah, these are cherubim, these angels that are further described with wheels and all this other stuff. These are cherubim, which cherubim don't, that idea, that thought, that imagination doesn't sound frightening, where these, when you're just reading through it and you're reading about these creatures, that they're called creatures, and then they have all these wheels and they're doing all this stuff with wings and faces and everything. Sounds crazy, but when you consider they're cherubim, I don't know if endearing is the right word, but there's a sense of peace with them and not angst like it would be otherwise, I think.
I always think about, when I think of cherub, I think of baby angels, like at Valentine's. That's what pops into my head is when you say cherub.
Yes, but that's not exactly what they are.
No, that's not exactly what they are. But that does give me a sense of peace.
Yes.
A baby angel. And then, they were on the Ark of the Covenant also.
Right, they covered the ark.
Cherubim and the seraphim,
mm-hmm.
which maybe are the same thing, I don't know.
Well, if you go back and look at how God told Solomon to build the temple and everything, there were cherubim everywhere. They were woven into the fabrics, carved into the wood and covered with gold all over the place. There were cherubim. So, I wonder where they are right now. I think they're all around us somehow. Okay, verse 15. "Now, as I looked at the living creatures, the cherubim, I saw a wheel on the earth beside the living creatures, one for each of the 4 of them." So there were 4 wheels, right? "As for the appearance of the wheels and their construction, their appearance was like the gleaming of beryl, and the 4 had the same likeness, their appearance and construction being as it were a wheel within a wheel." Kind of like a gyroscope. "When they went in any of their 4 directions without turning as they went. And their rims were tall and awesome. And the rims of all 4 were full of eyes all around. And when the living creatures went, the wheels went beside them." How about that? "And when the living creatures rose from the earth, the wheels rose. Wherever the Spirit wanted to go, they went, and the wheels rose along with them. For the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. When those went, these went. And when those stood, these stood. And when those rose from the earth, the wheels rose along with them. For the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels." He repeats that. These are amazing heavenly beings. Amazing heavenly beings. It's a glimpse into the supernatural realm, significantly dumbed down so we have a chance of grasping it. Even what we're seeing, what we're imagining right now looking at this, isn't exactly the reality of it, but it's the best Ezekiel could do to describe it. 2 Chronicles 16:9 tells us that the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth. These eyes, seeing everything, they represent, and it's the Spirit. It's the Holy Spirit. The Spirit of the living creatures. These eyes on the rims of the wheels represent God's omniscience, and that nothing is hidden from His Spirit. And the spirit of the creatures when it was in the wheels. I think that's awesome that we have that knowledge, that he gave us that detail. Otherwise, we just have these wheels with eyes. What in the world? Psalm 103:20 says, "Bless the Lord, O you His angels, you mighty ones who do His word, obeying the voice of His word." These cherubim were always connected to God, always ready to do His will, always obeying His voice. They had intimate connection to God, and they were very active in His service. You don't get the idea that they're just standing there waiting for their next assignment. You see active, for the most part. We'll get to the part where they stand still, but in 22 it talks about the expanse, which I thought was very interesting. So picture this. Over the heads of the living creature there was the likeness of an expanse shining like awe-inspiring crystal spread out above their heads. So expanse is the Hebrew word rakeia or something, also translated firmament, which is a thing. It's the Greek word stereoma, which refers to anything firm or solid, is what the Septuagint. So it's this expanse isn't just what we would imagine as expanse, just nothingness. It was something. It was a firmament. Ezekiel, in essence, saw a large platform over the heads of the living creatures that was dazzling. This platform was dazzling, like ice or crystal or something. So there's this it's a big one. But under the expanse, their wings were stretched out straight, one toward another, and each creature had 2 wings covering its body, once again. And when they went, I heard the sound of their wings like the sound of many waters, like the sound of the Almighty, a sound of tumult, like the sound of an army. When they stood still, they let down their wings, and there came a voice from above the expanse over their heads. When they stood still, they let down their wings. So here we have this image of these 4 living creatures. Still, it's only 4 of them. But it sure does sound like a lot more, doesn't it? Imagine the sound of Niagara Falls. I don't know if you've heard that. It's loud. The sound of the Almighty. In different places, His voice is described as rushing water. Here we have this sound of a rushing army. Sound of an army coming with the horses and chariots rushing. All this noise, this loud sounds and everything. And then a voice comes from above this firmament, above this expanse, and you can almost see these creatures stop in their tracks and lower their wings in submission and alertness and attentiveness to the voice. The sound of their wings cease, their wings fall to their sides. God is speaking to them. Wouldn't that be cool if we would be like that? Then it talks about the throne. It says, and above the expanse over their heads there was like the likeness of a throne. The likeness of a throne. In appearance like sapphire. And seated above the likeness of a throne was a likeness with a human appearance. And upward from what had the appearance of his waist, I saw as it were gleaming metal, like the appearance of fire enclosed all around. And downward from what had the appearance of his waist, I saw as it were the appearance of fire, and there was brightness around him, like the appearance of the bow that is in the cloud on the day of rain. So was the appearance of the brightness all around. Such was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. And when I saw it, I fell on my face, and I heard the voice of one speaking, which we'll find out what he said next week. But again, everything's a likeness of. He couldn't describe it. And it's amazing enough the way that he did describe it. But that one commentary that I saw said, though Ezekiel could describe the cherubim in detail, all he could say of God was that he looked like glowing metal and fire. The splendor of his glory was so brilliant that Ezekiel could only see his form before he was forced to look down and sit there and stare at him. He fell on his face at the appearance of the likeness of his glory. And one more quote, Matthew Henry. He says, the eternal Son, the second person in the Trinity, who afterwards took the human nature, is here denoted. The first thing observed was a throne. It is a throne of glory, a throne of grace, a throne of triumph, a throne of government, a throne of judgment. It is good news to men that the throne above the firmament is filled with the one who appears, even there, in the likeness of a man. The throne is surrounded with a rainbow, the well-known emblem of the covenant, representing God's mercy and covenanted love to his people. The fire of God's wrath was breaking out against Jerusalem, but bounds should not be set to it. He would look upon the bow and remember his covenant. And all that the prophet saw was only to prepare him for what he was about to hear. God delights to teach the humble. Let sinners then humble themselves before him, and let believers think upon his glory, that they may be gradually changed into his image by the Spirit of the Lord. Wouldn't that be wonderful? But when we look at these things, without looking at them, how are we even going to know what it looks like, right? So, talk to me. What do you think?
I want to add that Ezekiel's name means the strength of God or strengthened by God.
Mm-hmm.
So he had a very fitting name there because that's exactly what he got.
Yep.
Is God's strength.
Mm-hmm. And what if you would think, I think when God called Jeremiah, it wasn't quite like this, was it? Never know, he knew that he was created in his mother's womb to be a prophet. But in Isaiah saw God, was called to be a prophet when he saw God in his glory in the temple. But can you imagine, I know we're all still human and everything, but can you imagine if God appeared to you or to me like this? How could we not? How could we ever go about our normal day again? It seems like it would be hard to do. But it's not, it's an exciting chapter when you break it down and look at all the things that it really represents.
Yeah, it does. It's like you said, Dan, that how do you go about your normal day after seeing something like that? But that's what he did. He went about his normal day. And I haven't read the rest of the chapter, but I'm just going to assume here that he was also encouraging his people and doing the will of God.
He was a prophet, so he would have been telling them what God said.
Right, he's telling them what God said.
Uh-huh.
So, but at the same time, he's also going about his normal day. I mean, he had to, because he was a slave, a captive. That's what we need to do. Yeah. We need to go about our normal day and be a messenger to God, for God.
Yep, and remember, these people had just, they weren't like they were at the end of 70 years. You know, at the end of 70 years, I think is when they heard that the temple had been burned, and or maybe somebody went and saw it and came back and told, and they were, you know, sorrowful and all like that. But these are still basically the same people that were not believing Jeremiah, that were not repenting, that were still worshiping their idols until God forced them out of that land. So they really haven't. They didn't get forced into exile and change into wonderful God-fearing people immediately. So that's why the need for Ezekiel in the first place, so that he could.
And their hearts were so hardened that some of the things God has Ezekiel do are really strange, like trying to get his point across.
That'll have to come. I know that you're right about that, but nothing is coming to my mind right now. It's been a long time since I've looked at Ezekiel, but I remember he had to do some strange things. He was a illustrator, or the things that he did. He had.
They were like word pictures instead, like exam. I don't know. It was like an object lesson.
Yes.
Or something.
Was it Jeremiah that had to wear the same underwear forever, and then put them in a rock to illustrate the filth of the nation? It could have been out as Ezekiel that I pulled into that, but I remember talking about that a little bit. So now, do you want to see these creatures, or I mean, I'd be okay dreaming about them.
I think when we do, we'll say, "Wow, that's what they look like."
Yeah. Yeah.
I read somewhere once a long time ago that the angels are, I don't know if I want to use the word jealous, but they're envious of mankind. Yes. Because they have never gotten to experience the grace of God. And they never will. No. And that's how amazing grace is. That that's something they'll never get to experience.
I think that there might even be a verse that says that. I'm not sure, but
maybe that's where I read it. I don't know. It just stuck with me. When I did read it. Because that's kind of powerful.
Yes.
You know, these are powerful creatures,
and if they had, they would have been kicked out with Satan.
Yeah. Yes.
That's what I think about, is how, you know, it says in the Bible that when Satan fell, he took a third of the angels with him. So, I mean, of course, that leaves 2/3 in heaven. So we still beat them 2-1. But
yeah, we still think the mightiest army is the biggest one, but and you know it is. I'm not arguing.
Yeah, in our human mind, that's the first thing we think of. But but we know with God, all things are possible. Even if it was like only 1/8 left. Yeah. You know, right. he could still do whatever he wants to do.
Yes.
With 1/8 of the angels left. But anyway, it just that's what I think about. You know, is that he took a third of those angels with him. Yeah. And so the other 2/3 that are left, I'm thinking they must be so highly devoted.
Oh yeah.
And so just so full of the Spirit that we won't never know that this side of heaven.
And the same thought that they don't, they would be jealous because they don't know God's mercy. There's also a lot, they only know what they see of us, right? There's a lot of humanity that they, besides the lack of mercy, that they don't know, right? Does that make sense? Am I not saying it right? There's a lot of things about us that they don't know. Not only the lack of, they can't read our minds. God, they don't know everything about us that God knows.
Right.
But they are nearby. They're always
Yes.
ministering to us. There's probably, even this week.
And then, a lot of people believe that when you die, you become an angel. I don't believe
No.
that.
No.
No.
They're created. They're,
And that's all there is.
Yeah.
Is what God created.
yeah, there's nothing to even, I don't even want to be an angel when I die. That's,
No.
seems weird.
Was it Aunt Maisel that said, maybe she said, she had to call out to her angels. She said, I wish my angels would come. I need my angels right now. I wish they would come help me move this couch. Or like she always talked about how her angels were right there helping her. You know how cute she was.
Yeah. Well,
She would just say like.
Well, you can't pray to your angels. You can't. I don't think you can call them down
she
to.
Just say she named her angels. She needs them. I'm just gonna say Bill and John to come help her move.
Well, I
Not serious in that, but she,
right.
Just
Acknowledging that she's got angels ministering to her.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then there's the thought of the angels on your shoulder. The good angel on one shoulder, and the bad angel on the other shoulder. And which one are you going to listen to?
Good or evil. Whatever it takes to, in your imagination or whatever illustration you need to get you to make the right choices, right?